What up, everybody? Welcome back to the pod.
I knew you were gonna stall, dude. I knew
I
this
know.
shit was gonna happen.
Yeah. Okay, you go. You do it, dude. I
Okay.
I can't lead in. I'm a bad leader. I can
God
I
damn
can
it, dude.
end
I
it
give
on a
you
great
one
way,
opportunity, and you
and I
say, I'm gonna
fucked
do
it
it.
up. And I fucked it up.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Alright, so tonight, we are bringing you one of our favorite DComs called Heavyweights. Before we dive right into this movie, what were your thoughts going into this? Like, what was the first time that you remember watching this? Was it when I showed you?
Oh yeah. This. You know what? It just reminded me of those classic '90s summer kid films that we grew up
No
with,
kidding.
dude. Like it just kind of reminded me of The Sandlot, just because it
That same
has to
vibe,
do with
right?
being at camp. Yeah, it's just that vibe of just comedy gold. And honestly, you just don't see that anymore. You really don't.
It's definitely not delivered in the same way it was. So, films like this probably wouldn't get made, similar to like Galaxy Quest, for like certain comedy lines or
Tropes.
certain one-liners. Like, yeah, this movie was funny. Like, this movie was great for its time. However,
Yeah.
that was also mid '90s, and I think that was one of Justin Long's first performances, like first
Oh.
acting debuts. I think. I'm almost certain that's one of his. But anyways, yeah, great movie. But yes, similar to this one, there are topics that are discussed and certain themes that are just like, yeah, this would be a little too on the nose for modern days audience, um, especially to those like more sensitive. However,
You
it's
mean everybody?
most people nowadays that we run into.
Yeah.
However, going back to the core of the film, this movie has heart. Symbol of when I watch this movie, I see like the symbol of childhood, the symbol of like friendship that you form over the course of like a week, or even in school, like you play with someone on the playground. It's like you're never gonna run into them again, or like no. Better scenario, you're at the McDonald's Playland Palace playing
Oh
with people that
god,
you'll
that
never
shit.
see again, and you're like best friends while you're playing, and then it's like, all right, man, I gotta go, peace, doggy,
Yeah.
and then you never see that person again. But for that
Yeah.
15 minutes, you were having the time of your life. Nothing else mattered.
The ball
Um,
pit, dude. The ball
the
pit
ball
and the
pit, the
jungle
slides, the
stuff,
tubes
yeah.
that smelled like socks, like all of it was
Oh god,
great
yeah.
in its heyday. It's sad to no longer see them as frequent, but it's like for good reason. It's like we've all been in
Yeah.
those tubes, dude.
Yeah, we all have. Yeah, you don't want to crawl through the tunnel of dankness.
No. Um, but no, this movie I'm trying to remember the first time I watched it. I had to have been a teenager and it was on like VHS. My
Mine was
I
just a couple years ago when we first watched it because you're the one that introduced it to me.
mhm. Yeah, and it was great. You had the time of your life watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing me laugh at every fucking scene.
Oh, I know.
I'm telling you, like, this movie, like, almost every scene has a bit of comedy in it, whether it's subtle humor or just on the nose or visual. Like, it's all there. It's everything you want in a kid comedy movie. Um, and obviously
It's
for
like the Sinbad movie that we watched too.
the first
The
kid,
first
oh,
kid.
I love that movie. If we ever have a discussion on that movie, there's so many scenes I'd want to go over, but we'll save that. But
Yeah,
yes,
and here's a little tidbit for people who are watching this podcast. How many ties does Sinbad go through in that movie? Post down below.
whoever has seen it, yes, comment
Yeah,
below.
whoever has seen that
Whoever has
movie.
counted how many ties he changes in that movie. Okay. Um, Now on to the movie of tonight's discussion. From the first viewing, what did you think? Like looking at the title, not knowing much going into it, what did you think this movie was going to be about? Heavyweights
I
is the
thought this.
title,
Yeah.
and uh, kids are on the poster holding up a sandwich, and then you see Ben Stiller with a thumbs up. Like, what do you think you're going to get out of this movie?
Well, first thinking without knowing that, hey, they're going to be going to camp or anything, it's like, oh, look, they're going to be making some food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know, like,
Like a
when I see
cook-off or
food on
something. They're holding a
poster, it's
giant
yeah,
ass
like a
sandwich.
cook-off. Yeah, like a cook-off or cooking, like just anything with the food, right? Just what shenanigans can you do with food? Because I don't know if you ever watched that Disney Channel movie, Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. That one was one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Okay.
So that's what I was thinking. So, but then once you realize, hey, they get to go to camp and do all the fun shit, then it's like, okay, this movie just turned. Oh god, I'm having a stroke, dude.
Okay, stop right there. So, the one where I think I've seen this movie and I
He's
actually
playing
really enjoyed
baseball
it.
and then he gets into cooking class.
Yes, at school. And
Yes,
then he makes all these like
yeah,
weird
yeah,
concoctions that end up being
yeah, and
good.
he becomes like one of the best cook-offs, and he has to
Yes. And
do
then
the cooking
his dad at
competition
the end
over
helps him.
the
He's like a sous
baseball
chef.
tournament. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's a great movie.
yeah.
Oh man.
So that's
Dude.
what I kind of correlated heavyweights to that movie a little bit at first,
Okay.
just seeing the title.
To be honest, when I saw the title, when I was holding the VHS in my hand, like I don't remember reading the back of the
I never
tape.
read the back of
Like I didn't
VHS
know what to
tapes.
expect. I honestly had no idea. And then when I pushed play and I started watching the first few scenes, I'm like, "What is this?" And it doesn't quite reveal itself until like towards the end of like the first act of the film. Um and that's when you're actually there at the camp. So, like in the first scene, first shot I think is the clock, right? You see the
Mm-hmm.
clock. And any kid in school would remember
Knows the
looking
clock.
at the clock constantly, waiting for these hands to move to like end of day, whether it was
I
2:30, three
still
o'clock, whatever
look
time
at
we
my
got out of
clock,
school.
dude. I don't know what it is. It's imprinted in my brain to look at the clock for time, even though I'm no longer in
It's
school,
a
you
muscle
know?
memory. It's muscle memory.
It really is.
Well, we've also grown into a society where it's like time is money. So it's like the more
Yep.
time that passes by, if you're not doing something to further progress yourself, you're fucking up somehow. So I think that's also like
Uh,
imprinted in our mind. It's like, fuck, what time is it? Oh shit, I should be doing something. You
yeah,
know?
I know, right?
But no, it starts looking at the clock and it's like seconds before the bell rings, and then bell rings, you
And
see
pure
all the
chaos.
pure chaos. You see all the kids running through the hallways, through past the lockers. Papers are flying in the air. Summer break is finally here. Yes! And then, and I remember in school when that used to be a thing. Like, not just like the graduation ceremony and you'd throw your hats in the air. Like, no. Like,
Yeah.
summer break, you'd throw your paper. Like, you're not going to turn in homework. So, whatever notes you had, fuck it. Make new notes
Yep,
at
in the
the end,
trash.
at the start of the new year.
Oh, I know, right?
You're not paying for your school supplies. Your parents are. You don't care. So, uh, so anyways, then we see the star, Jerry, and walking with one of his friends that is, I'm just gonna say, is unnamed. I'm not gonna make up a name for him. Nick, if you want to make up a name for him, be my
We
guest.
can call him Bob. Bob's a good
Bob,
kind of
Jerry
buddy.
and Bob,
Jerry
Jerry
and
and Bob
Bob.
are walking out of school, talking about what they're gonna do for their summer break, and then Jerry sees that his bus is about to leave, and he's like, "Oh no, that's my
And it's
bus!
leaving him and he's
Wait,
running. And I remember
stop!"
that one kid's like, hey, fat kid or whatever, like on the back of the bus. Like he's just like, run, fat kid, run.
Oh my god. And Jerry's just there like left in the wind like great. Now I got to walk home. So then we see a
Yeah.
montage with some
Oh,
happy-go-lucky music
dude.
playing in the background of him walking down the street. He walks past a dog. Like there's
Oh, the
this
dog totally scares the shit
dude,
out of him.
there's this young girl that's like walking this dog, and then Jerry's like walking up to it and it's like, "Oh, hey, how's it go?" Like cautiously, timidly almost. Looks at the dog. And then the dog like starts barking at him. He's like, "Oh shit."
He actually looked so scared, honestly. Like he actually honestly looked scared, and I wonder if that was a true reaction. Like they probably told him, "Hey, walk past the dog, and the dog will probably bark at you a little bit, but this one probably terrified the shit out of him."
They probably didn't even tell him that was going to be in the scene. They just said walk down
Oh
the
yeah,
street.
probably
And then
yeah.
that was
Just walk
just
down the
like an
street, yeah.
unpaid bystander
actor.
that was just in the
Yeah.
shot.
Just like the Santa Claus and Elf. Like the guy that Buddy the Elf walks up to, the guy in the red
Oh yeah, yeah, the
thing that looks like
jumpsuit.
Santa. He was just a normal Joe and he had no idea and he actually thought that, you know, he's just a weirdo in New York being an elf.
Well, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of weirdos in New York.
Mhm.
It's a big city. Um, so the next interaction while Jerry is walking on his journey home is he comes across like a lemonade stand. Two innocent little
Oh.
girls just selling lemonade. Back in the day, this is what kids used to do, and it was like 10 cents. And you get a little cup of lemonade. It was great on a hot day. Like that was great whenever you saw lemonade stands or Kool-Aid stands, whatever it was.
Oh yeah, the Kool-Aid
I
stands are the
remember. I
best.
remember some of those. It wasn't always lemonade. Or Tang. Tang. I remember.
Oh yeah.
Our grandmas know all about Tang. Let me tell you that. So the lemonade stand. So Jerry goes up to it and it's like, no, I'm not paying no 10 cents. He's like, I am thirsty today.
And he chugs it like a
He drops
champ.
down like what, $2 out of his pocket, crumpled
Mhm.
$2 bills, slams on the table, takes the pitcher of lemonade and starts chugging it, and it's just like pouring down his neck. It's really graphic, and these kids are like, oh, shocked, and they're like, Mom! Oh my god,
Oh,
the whole
dude.
business. Jer- Jerry finally makes it back home, and he sees in a driveway like this weird looking car, and he's like, whose car is this? It's not my parents. He goes up to the door, and then once he's greeted inside his house, they just totally bombard him like Nick. Like, how did they even like welcome him home?
They were very hard pressed. The guy that's visiting, he's just like, sit down, we need to talk. And dude, I'm gonna say this. His dad looks like Dr. Phil,
He
man.
does look
Look
like Dr.
just like
Phil.
Dr. Phil,
Manifested Dr.
yeah.
Phil.
Mm-hmm.
The actor in question is Jeffrey Tambor, where he's already like had the receding hairline, and had the mustache to accompany it, and it's like, okay, your stature, everything about your profile screams Dr. Phil
It's
right now.
Dr. Phil.
Even his tone and his voice, like, Jerry, we have to nip this thing in the bud,
But
son.
mm-hmm.
And obviously, they're talking about his weight, and they're trying to encourage him to go to this fat camp, and it's supposed to be like camaraderie between all of the kids that are going. Like, look what you can be a part of. Like, have this be
Yeah.
your summer break. I think is what their parents were trying to say, but the way they went
Yeah.
about it was very rash, and
Oh
is like
yeah.
treating their son like he has a disease, and the son is just like, hey, like I just got home and I want to hang out this summer. Like I don't want to go to camp.
Yeah. And he even looked at his dad and he's like, well, you're fat too. You don't help yourself.
And yeah, and the father is just like, "No, we're we're sending you here and the discussion is final." And they watch this little
Oh god, the
the
video.
infomercial for it. And Jerry sees like the blob, which by far, to be honest, like that would be the one thing I would be most excited for if I were going to this camp,
Hmm.
is going into the lake and just like sitting at the end of the blob waiting for someone to launch me in the air. Like I am so for that.
I
Like
would be the launcher. I want to see people fly.
I would want to go to this camp. Um so Jerry like sort of warms up to it when he sees all the activities, and then when he sees what it's targeting at, he's like, "No, I'm not going to do this." And so the parents obviously tell him like, "No, it's already said and done. Like we've already paid you for your plane ticket. So we're just telling you like what you're doing this summer." And the guy that comes over, that's the owner of the weird car in the front, is no other than, you would recognize him from the movie Holes as as Dr. Pendansky. And I really liked his character in that movie Holes, by the way. Just beat the
Same.
dubs.
And I have a theory about this guy.
Oh,
And we're going to be theorizing some stuff throughout this movie later on.
we
But
are
what if
actually.
he's connected Holes and this movie because he's been at different camps? So he knows his way around the brush of different camps and what goes on. And he's literally the mole.
It could be. He is
Yeah.
kind of like a little mole in
Yeah.
Holes. He plays like the surrogate like psychiatrist for the camp for the boys to have
Mm-hmm.
confidence in and talk to, and so he gets information and then he can tell that to his superiors, Mr. Sir and the warden.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like
Yeah.
I kind of I like that theory actually. I would believe that.
See, I come up with some good ones once in a
Yeah, look at
while.
you.
Yeah. Now wait till we get to the end, and then you'll really see.
Oh, so so now at this point, we get to the next scene, which is now Jerry on the plane, and he's in the. Okay, this is what cracks me up about this scene is there's a window seat that seems to be unoccupied. Then there's a very large man in the aisles. Well, no, in the middle seat, and Jerry is trying to like shove him over more to the other side because he's because Jerry is on the aisle. And he's like, dude, like quit like leaning over me, because this guy in the middle seat is just like sleeping and like slouching over. So I'm just like wondering if like why would if no one else was in the window seat, why wouldn't you just take the window seat so you could lean against
Yeah.
the wind? I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking here.
Comedic value.
That's definitely what this was. So then we're introduced to none other than Keenan Thompson,
As a
and
Roy.
he plays Roy Murphy, and he's one of my favorite characters actually. Uh, he immediately comes up to Jerry, kneels down, and he's like, "So you going to fat camp?" And Jerry's like, "No. Why do you say that? 'Cause you're fat." He's like, "Is that your dad?" And he like points at the guy in the middle seat. He's like, "No. Why do you say that? 'Cause he's fat too." He's like, "No. Like, why
Oh,
would you say
fuck.
that?" And he's like, "Well, are you going to fat camp?" He's like, "Yeah. Like I'm going." Uh, and he's like, "Okay, cool. Well, I'm Roy." And then they exchange their names, and then um, earlier in the scene, one of the stewardess puts a little like wing pin on
Yeah.
Jerry's pocket. After they have that little encounter, Roy looks back at the guy in the middle seat. He's like, "That is your dad, isn't it?" He's like, "No, that's not my dad." So shortly
Uh,
after landing, Roy tells Jerry, like, you're in safe hands, and telling him like what to expect of Cam because he's been there before, and getting Jerry all hype. And then they meet some of the other kids that are like awaiting their bus pickup, and the bus driver is no other than Pat. Pat is a G.
oh, Pat.
Pat's awesome in this movie.
And he would make a great dad to Jerry because, man, do they look alike.
Okay, so theory number two. This is something that I had noticed in this last rewatch, is how similar Pat, the bus driver, and also one of the counselors at Camp Hope, that we shortly learn thereafter meeting him, they look very similar. The same haircut, the same like shortcut bob haircut that Jerry has, Pat has, and I don't know, certain facial features, they look very similar. I'm
Yeah.
like, what if this whole scheme to get Jerry to go to Camp Hope was to
Meet his real
finally
dad.
meet his biological father?
I know.
And
Dr. Phil came in and swooped on
Dr.
in.
Phil was the adopted father of said Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
they were the adopted parents. And this was their way to reconnect their adopted son with the biological father for one summer. I don't know, man, because there's a few
Yeah, I
scenes where
see
they
it.
do click. Like they have a few scenes
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one together where they bond. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, it's working for them.
Father and son moment, yeah.
Okay, well, now that we've been introduced to the rest of the gang, so they all climb into the bus, and they're going to Camp Hope. They're on the road,
And I
and
love how they pass all the fucking fast food places, dude.
the ancient Taco Bell sign, and what else was in there? Was Arby's in there?
Yeah, Arby's.
Arby's was in the
Yeah.
scene, and they're all joking in the van, or no, the bus. Excuse me. And they're like, "Come on, let's just pull over. Let's get something. All right, we'll do it." And then Pat switches
He's like, no,
lanes.
fake out.
Yeah, it fakes out and then gets back on the road. And they're like, "Oh, you suck, Pat." He's like, save it." And they finally get to the entrance of Camp Hope, and one of the characters Sims, and he's this one kid that with the staff, and he's like waving back and forth, nodding his head like no, like don't enter. And Jerry locks eyes with him, and he's just like, "What the f?" And he's just
Yeah,
like,
he's just like, oh god.
he has no idea what to think now. He's like, "Why is this kid like beckoning me not to enter? Like, what's going on?" So then, as the bus leaves, Sims then is seen like chasing after the bus, like almost like Jerry was in the beginning of the movie, like "Wait for me." So we don't know what that meant, but we will soon find out because in scenes to come, we will find out what the premonition that Sims had. But before we get
Mm-hmm.
there, we enter the chipmunk
Buns of
house.
Steel.
No, not the Buns of Steel. Oh, yes. Yes, the Buns of Steel. Yeah, Tim. Tim, one of the other
Yeah.
counselors that I guess from a couple years ago he has like undergone like a weight loss, and he's actually like actually got like a slender body, and like all the other kids are like making fun of him because he's the odd one out. And
Yeah.
they're
Walton's like, hey, were you pregnant?
and he's like, "No, you guys are just jealous because I got these buns of steels," and he's wearing these short shorts
Oh
and
god.
doing some little like swaying back and forth.
Booty jiggle.
Sure, call it booty jiggle. It's not a twerk. It's not quite a twerk yet. They're interrupted by no other than the new camp nurse, Julie, who I don't know if she was in anything else. Um, I don't recognize her from anything else,
Yeah, me neither.
but I'm sure she was in several movies. But I can't place her. I think she was in that movie Little Nicky.
Hmm.
And it's been forever since I've seen it. Actually, no, she was in the Mighty Ducks as well. D2. We've also
Oh.
talked about that movie D2. The Mighty Ducks are back. Dun 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 dun
Dun, 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 dun,
dun.
dun. Oh wait.
Wrong
Wait,
movie.
is that the theme song?
We're gonna go
Because
with it.
every '90s. Oh wait, that's Back to the Future. Oh
Yeah,
fuck.
I know. We're all lost, but it's all right. Our viewers know what to expect from us. So,
Yep.
so Julie then introduces herself and then is asking around like where's the nurse's office at? And everyone's just like looking around like, "Oh no." And then she looks to Pat, and Pat's like
Oh
flustered. He doesn't know how to
god.
talk to girls yet. And poor guy. And he's having a stroke moment, but we've all been there. We've all had strokes, and
Mm-hmm.
especially put on the spot. So he can't give her a right answer, and he's just like, it's like that way. Points in a direction. She's like, "Oh, okay, I'll figure it out." And then Roy goes up to Pat, and like, "Pat, what are we gonna do with you, man? You've been here over 10 years, and you don't know where the infirmary is." Ah.
Uh,
So they go and Pat like head in hands almost, just like, "Okay, let's go." Walk away off screen. So then we go to the chipmunk house, and one of my favorite scenes because we get no other than the snack flex.
yep.
Once we get introduced to everyone, all the kids in the bunk, Jerry talks to Josh and is like, "Hey, I hope it's okay, but I snuck in a few sleeves of Oreos just in case." And Josh like whispers to him, he's like, "That was very sneaky of you." And then, without hesitation, he yells, "Chipmunks!" And he's like, and everyone gets, everyone's attention is on him, and they're like, "Unload!" And all of a sudden, we get this
Oh,
snack unloading
dude.
montage.
Snack montage that would make you fucking hungry.
So there's like one of the ottomans that they have in the bunkhouse is attached to like a screw like and a swivel, and it like swivels out of place, and it's revealing a almost like a bottomless pit in the in the bunkhouse, and they just unload all of their snacks into this into this little contraption. And then you see Salami Sam, like his nickname comes from something. He smuggled in salami meats.
Salami.
Like
Mm-hmm.
if I'm bringing snacks into a camp, I'm bringing dry goods like crackers, chips, cookies, gummy candies, like stuff like that is what I can think of. This man is bringing in a
Full
whole
blown
charcuterie board,
salamis. Yeah.
minus the olives. It is just
Yeah.
so funny because like all these other kids have candy, and this kid's pulling out like
Yeah, he's like,
salami.
"Here, help me get this off my back."
Oh my god, it's so funny. And so they're all helping each other like get their snacks out, and then it's so funny. Nicholas and one of the other kids, I forget his name, um, they're like flexing like, oh, he reveals open his like trench coat or his jacket, and he's got all these like bags of candy, like jelly beans, gummy worms, like all these
like
hard
a
candies
like
and
a
gummy
candy
candies.
dealer.
Yeah, and he's like showing him. It's like there's a sleeve for everything. And then Nicholas is like, that's nice, but check this out. Opens his briefcase
Fucking Seto
because he's a
Kaiba it.
businessman
And
back
he's like,
home.
"Look at this." He's like, "Yours? Look at mine."
So they're like, and they give a little nod of approval, and then they just embark on the unloading of the snacks, and it's so funny this whole scene, because it makes me hungry first of all, and secondly, I'm like, where can I make secret compartments in my room for these snacks? Because
Oh yeah.
what's funny, and like you know this, I've hidden snacks from myself and surprised
Oh, I know you
myself.
have.
Like, oh, I hid these from myself. I'm like, I found them. It's so funny.
The secret stash.
The secret
We
stash.
all got them.
So now we have. Help me out here, Nick. So
Hmm.
after the unloading of the snacks, what do you remember next?
Next is the introduction to the owners of the Camp Hope.
Of Camp Hope. They assemble in
Mm-hmm.
the assembly hall, if you will. Yes. And then.
And then we get the saddest thing ever. They were all happy. No,
No.
what?
It
What do you
is
mean no? You
sad.
know what's going to happen. I know it is sad.
Aw.
And people have realized, fuck, I'm having a stroke now
No,
because we're
say,
talking
dude,
about
you're doing great.
strokes. Yeah, I know. We get to the bankruptcy.
Oh no.
Yeah. They were so happy to see these owners because on the tape, we see the owners who are this happy go lucky couple who wants these kids to have fun at camp, and they come trudging in and they kind of do their little kumbaya greeting, with the hands like hoo ha.
Yeah, the Bushkin family, played by Jerry
Yeah.
Stiller and Mira, I believe.
Yeah.
Mira. And yeah, such a wholesome like old couple, like they could be your grandparents. And all these kids are like so happy to see them, but they have devastating news that they've recently filed for bankruptcy and
Yep.
they've lost ownership of the camp.
Yep.
And they are sad to announce that it's their last year hosting it, and the new owners are about to introduce themselves. And what's sad and hilarious at this like announcement of news is the camera pans to like some of the kids in the audience and Sims, of all people, that was warning like Jerry entering Camp Hope with the staff, Sir Gandalf Sims. He's like, he's got tears in his eyes, and he's like, what is going
Yeah.
on? And then everyone is like, what? I want to go home.
I know.
So
Oh fuck.
then,
Mickey Mouse is sad now.
Nick, I'm gonna let you do this intro. I'm gonna build up to it, okay? So,
Hell yeah. We get the best intro of a movie. We get Global Jim. Dun 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 dun. We get Tony Perkins.
Tony,
Dun, dun,
yes, Tony Perkins, aka
White Goodman.
White Goodman from Dodgeball. And here's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why this is the same character. I'm just gonna say it. First of all, it's literally the same person, different name. It's the same persona. He's a fit man, and he's looking to make a big buck by getting some followers, some fitness
Advertisement.
influencing
Mm-hmm.
followers. And he enters this assembly hall, scares the living life out of these kids with all these cameras rolling around. Sirens are going off as the team is coming in, the whole Perkis team, and selling his idea of the Perkis system. You guys are going to be my prized winners of athletes, essentially, is what he's like
Mm-hmm.
pitching to these kids. Like, I'm going to turn this camp into a fitness infomercial, and I'm going to sell it. And this was White Goodman's start because he talks about, I used to be you. I was 340
Yep.
pounds and I had no self esteem and blah, blah, blah. And going on this whole rant, I'm like, didn't we hear this before?
Yep.
And I'm just going to say it. It's definitely him. I,
And think about this,
hmm,
like the logos on the stage, it's literally him holding up a globe. That's where he maybe got the whole persona for global gym. Like
the,
he wants to have that global influence, you
yes, the
know?
use of symbolism, the colors, it's the purple and the black, it's the same colors as the cobras. I'm like, dude, this is hilarious. This was his start. His what would you say? His origin story of White Goodman, aka
Yep, the
Tony
origin
Perkis for
story.
this movie. So, after revealing his plan for the camp, all these kids are like, this is not what we signed up for. This is not what our parents paid for. Like, I'm scared. What do we do?
No.
And Jerry's point of view is like, I want to have fun. Like, I don't want to do this. My whole thing was having fun this summer. And slowly but surely, the Perkis team, Tony, decides to take everything fun about the camp and destroy it. And he wants to give
Yep.
these kids no reason to have fun, no reason to have a laugh. He wants them to just be,
In
uh,
tip top shape.
yeah. But not just that, but he wants to have power of influence over them. And he wants this system that he has for them to all buy into it, which they're not. They're not doing it. And what happens next is we get introduced to one of
To
my other
your
favorite.
favorite character.
Yes, one of my favorite characters from the Perkins team is Lars.
Laz.
So Lars is then appointed as camp counselor to the Chipmunk Bunk, and all the kids are like, "Oh, well, what's your name?" He's like, "Well, I am Lars." It's like, "What kind of name is that?" And then Lars walks up to Roy, and he's like, "Far away." And Roy like gulps, and then
Where Lars is like, oh, just remember when I sleep, I make weird noises, but just know I'm okay. And they're waking up in the morning, you just see Jerry listening to Lars snoring. He's like, just fucking dying.
he's got some
And
serious
then that's
sleep apnea. Is
when,
what he has.
oh, I know, yeah. And then that's when Tony Perkins gets on the little like radio and he says something where he's like, okay, listen up, you little something little
Good morning, campers. He's like,
campers.
today's today's word of the day is value. Do you have any? Not yet. He's like,
Uh,
by the end, he's like, by the time I'm done with you guys, we're gonna have a bunch of skinny winners.
yep.
And and Jerry like gets up, and Roy's like, did he just say skinny wieners?
Skinny wieners?
And Jerry looks at Roy and he's like, Roy, what's going on? It's so funny. So
yeah.
after they're like abruptly awoken by the intercom message, then begins the weigh-in of all the kids
Mm-hmm.
at camp and the photos. And this adds for a lot of comedy because after the weigh-in, obviously Tony Perkis like writes all the weight and height measurements down for the starting point, and then takes him to go get photos. And this is what's really funny is because they're taking like mug shots essentially. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a front view holding like your
Side
yeah,
view.
holding like a plate with or a sign with like your information, and then a side view, profile view, all that. And then when it gets to Roy, Uh, Roy's like, okay, I'm picking my nose, and Lars is the one taking the camera. He's like, come on, and and then Roy like takes the sign, puts it in front of his butt, and like bends her over, and then Lars like pushes
Dude,
the snap
camera
button,
starts working.
and the camera like glitches out. It's like, and Lars is like, you broke my camera. Oh my god, I love that part.
Uh,
Oh. So, like, all these kids are just like going through the ringer. It's like, what the hell?
I know.
And then,
Poor kids.
and then what happens after that?
Then that's when Lars meets Julie, and that's when we get that little funny moment where she's like,
It's like, oh, don't worry. I have them on the body system. She's like, the body system? And obviously he's trying to say buddy, but just the way his accent is making it sound. Oh, it's just so funny. But yeah, you see like all the kids like after he yells it in the whistle, like they all like grab their partner, and while they're in the water, they grab their hands like, yeah, we have a partner. Like we're doing what we're supposed to. Don't hurt us.
yeah.
um,
uh,
and then yeah, and then he asks Nurse Julie, he's like, oh, I was wondering if you can give me a deep tissue massage because I've been having pain with my sciatic nerve. And she's like, oh, I'm sure I can pencil you in. Not looking enthused at all. By
yeah.
the way. She's not intimidated by the presence of Lars. The next scene, we get to the first softball game. And
Oh yes.
boy, oh boy, is this painful to watch. They're having a go of it. A lot of their players are getting like are getting injured and getting put on bench. Everyone's asking to be taken out and going to the nurse's station. And then poor nurse.
Dude, they got injured. Like, dude, their injuries, like, dude, they were just so beat up
They got
in
like
one little game.
they got like banged up knees. They got banged up heads. I'm guessing from like getting hit with the ball. I'm like, who the first of all, who is on the pitcher's mound? Like, who's throwing these like rockets at them? To be given
They
these,
weren't throwing rockets. The guy was underhanding it, and they were hurting themselves.
I guess. So, poor Nurse Julie, her first round here at Camp Hope, and her infirmary is full, and she's like, what are you guys doing out there? And one of the kids is like, we're percusizing, Nurse Julie. And she's just like, this can't be right. So there's already like an inklage of one of the staff members that's thinking like, this is too much for these kids. Indicator number one, how this guy is running this whole situation. I'm going on a tangent here. Okay, so I could just tell like she's thinking that right now.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I agree. She's seen these kids totally beat up and worn out, even just it being a baseball game, and she's just like, yeah, this isn't going to be good for the kids' health, because she's coming at it like, I'm a nurse, and these kids are just being wrung up to dry, like, and just, all at once,
Uh-huh. So once the game is over, the MVP team that they're facing off is like celebrating, and even
Oh yeah, because they kicked their ass.
yeah, and
What was the score? Like 30 something to nothing after like 4 or 5. I like how when he was trying to score, he's doing 8 and then gets hit with the freaking ball, and he breaks down a 9 because
the
of
ball,
another
yeah,
home run.
the ball hits like the sign that this kid is like writing in chalk, like the current scores. And the ball like hits the sign and it's like, oh shit, no, it's not an 8 anymore. Let me just draw a 9 through it. It's a 9. They got 9 points so far. 9 runs. And yeah, so the kids our Camp Hope team gets clobbered. And in the midst of the defeat, we're brought back to Chipmunk Bunk. And Tony is in there discussing his distaste with the team, how they performed. The other kids that used to be a chipmunk back in the day, he revealed the hiding locations for all the snacks.
Yep.
And then, after the hidden food caches have been ravaged by Burger's team, Josh tries to stand up for Jerry and starts taunting Tony. He looks over at him. He's like, Well, it's like, who does this candy belong to? And Josh like speaks up. He's like, I can tell you who this candy belongs to. His name is Seymour Butts. And what's funny is I pointed this out to you. What Josh actually says is not Seymour Butts. It was like that line was put in like ADR, like afterwards. You could tell he said
Mm-hmm.
like the lips don't match the words that are coming out of his mouth. So I don't know exactly what he says. We'd have to do some digging. But he says Seymour Butts. And Tony like looks at the list. He's like, Seymour Butts? Who's Seymour Butts? Who's seen more butts? And and then Josh is like, nobody's seen more butts than you, Uncle Tony. And then all the kids start laughing. I'm laughing. It's a funny joke. What is he? No, no. Tony then says, uh, like, you don't want to be messing with me. You don't want to be messing with the man. And Josh is like, oh, I didn't know I was messing with the man. And then Tony's like, oh, we got a real comedian here. It's like, why don't I book you on your own private tour? And then all the kids are like, oh, what does that mean? And so all the kids are still laughing. And then we get like a freeze frame image of like Josh laughing. And then a
Yeah.
white screen fades over his face
Like he died.
like he died. And then the next scene is the morning. And the intercom plays over again. And Tony's like, Josh has been sent away. And we see like his bed has been made up, the blankets are on it, everything is like no one was there the night before. So it's like, how, first of all, how did Josh get escorted without anyone else waking up?
It was laws.
I wonder like how that was done, because
Yeah, who knows?
no one else seems to know. So the next scene,
Is sad.
it is pretty sad.
They do the sad compilation of where they start destroying the blob, and they just keep showing like the bad food and
Oh
taking away the go
yeah.
karts, because that's when Jerry's writing to his grandma saying about war and how this whole camp just totally turned now. But what made me laugh though is towards the end when they're getting so hungry they started chasing the wild cows with those like makeshift weapons,
it
trying to get the cows that they're chasing them in the field.
it is like
Like
a
they want to like they want to eat them like a burger.
it is like a quick montage that follows that scene, because like we get clips of them in the cafeteria seeing like the bad food, then we get clips of like,
Yeah.
yeah, the blob's demise, like getting poked with a spear.
And even what happened with Josh, like I love how that one guy he's just like, yeah, he died.
Yeah, what's funny is like in the cafeteria scenes that follows this montage, while Jerry is like writing to his grandma explaining what's going on at camp. It's like everyone has some news story to say about Josh. Like, hey, did you hear about Josh? Like, hey, the word on the street
Hmm.
about Josh. Like, we heard something, like something, something, something. And Jerry's like hearing like all of these stories, doesn't know what to believe. And then yeah, the guy, the laid back, cafeteria worker with a bandana on and a cigarette in his hand. He's like, yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear about your friend Josh. Yeah, well, he's dead. Like, how else would
I
you deliver
know.
it to a kid? Like, just your simple
He
line
dead.
is that.
That's
It's,
it.
oh god, it's so
You know
funny.
how we deliver it? Trash.
Yeah, we would say that. Oh
Hmm.
god. Um,
With the Toby Maguire sad face gif.
oh, the sad crying face, not the Dawson's Creek
Yeah.
crying face.
No. Mm-mm.
With all of these rumors about what happened to Josh, Jerry doesn't know what to think. And while writing to his grandma saying, Grandma, whoever said war is hell, they've never been to camp before. And I'm like, oh boy,
Mm.
here we go. We get, uh,
The dance scene.
we do get the dance scene. And I guess adjacent camp, dance.
Hmm.
And this is Tony's way of making the guys feel like embarrassed because they're already shy and insecure. and he's trying to capitalize on that so that he can break them. I guess as part of this process, like this boot camp process, to break down the individuals. Um, and Pat, Nurse Julie, and Tim, one of the other former counselors, they were kind of cast out from their original positions, and Tim's just kind of like hanging out there, and Pat's like on custodial duty, which kind of sucks because he's the one that really cares about the kids. You can tell, and all the adults are just like talking there at the table. Tim's just saying like, "Oh, this bites." Like he can see like how the evening is progressing because all the girls are on one side of the dance floor, and then the boys are like all like huddled over like on the other side of the dance floor, just talking, theorizing like what's gonna happen tonight, and everyone's afraid to make the first move. And music is playing in the background, and we see like Lars with the snitch, former chipmunk at the DJ table. And dude, fucking Lars, man.
The way he's dancing and doing like the little jive up there on the stage.
He is like in his own little world. And meanwhile, Pat and Julie are talking at the punch table, and uh, you know, Julie like comments on the boys like, God, this is like really, this must be like really embarrassing, for the guys.
Yeah.
And Pat's like, yeah, I know, they're too young to talk to girls. And Julie like looks over, to Pat and's like, well, like, do you want to dance? And Pat's like,
And then he
oh,
freezes up
yeah.
again.
He strokes, and he like has a moment. He's like, yeah, oh, I got this
I
thing,
sprained my
and
something.
then leaves to go join Tim. And then a song comes on, and Tim like, what one of the
He's
kids,
just like, fuck it. He's
yeah,
just like, I'm gonna do my thing and get this started because he's like, this is just awful right now.
because it starts off with like, ooh yeah,
Ooh, yeah.
and Tim is just like, oh, I'm feeling it now. So one of the kids mentions like, oh my God, Tim's blown a microchip, because Tim is just like gyrating and like moving his body, and he's like, whoa. And Pat's like, Tim, what are you doing? Like, you're you're embarrassing yourself. He's like, no, I'm saving the dance. Like if I start dancing, then you come in, then everyone will come in, and it'll be boogie fever. It'll be contagious. You can't stop it. So he's trying. Pat thinks it's hilarious, but he goes back over to Julie, and then Julie's like staring, like not knowing what to think of this situation. And then Pat can't help himself. Then he joins Tim, and they start moving. And then Julie comes
Yeah.
in. So it's all the adults so far. And then Pat's like, "Come on, boys, like just get in. Once you start dancing, everyone will start dancing. We'll start having a good time."
Yeah.
And then that's when it picks up, and you start feeling good. Like you start feeling happy
Yeah.
again. And then you see Lars like busting, like breaking a sweat, doing his dance moves, and it's like, I think it's like Love Machine that's playing in the background. I'm just a love machine. Like I think that's what the song is. And so that goes on. All the boys like they start pairing up with the girl dancers.
Yeah, they finally, are dancing and having fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then it gets shut down
Yeah, it's
quick.
short-lived because who wants to crash the party? No other than
Tony.
Mm-hmm. Fuckboy Tony, aka Tony Perkis, aka White Goodman. He's here,
Yep.
and he like has the microphone in his hand, and he's like pounding it in his fist. He's like, "All right, the dance is over." And what's so funny about this scene is like the lights come on, and then everyone starts dispersing. But then Salami Sam is there with his date, and
Just
they're like,
making out.
dude, they're just like looking around, like they see everyone moving, and then they just start, yeah, then they start kissing, and you're like, what the hell?
Salami Sam's getting some.
Hey, he's going home and having a nice dream when he gets back.
Yeah.
Following that scene,
We get the first dad and son talk because Jerry's
at the
upset
go-karts?
about the dance at the go-kart, and he's just sitting there.
Okay,
Yeah.
segueing us, yeah.
Anyways, we get a nice wholesome scene. You see Jerry by himself at the go-karts, and he's just staying in one of the go-karts, and it's, he's just sitting there just kind of messing with the wheel, and Pat kind of sees him like on the go-karts and sees that he's just kind of down in the dumps, and they kind of
Mhm.
have like that first bonding moment, and this is where the theory comes in, like he might actually be his dad because they have like that father-esque son type talk where they kind of are in agreement, like, summer was supposed to be fun, and now it's just, nothing's really taken off here and there. But what was cool about that scene was Pat can kind of feel how down the dumps he is, and he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna make him feel better." And that's when he starts to push him around the track and pretend like, "Hey, the go-kart's actually moving so he can actually experience it." And
Mhm.
off in the distance, Julie's watching this, and she kind of adores that Pat kind of took
Yeah.
things by the wheel, no pun intended, and kind of made Jerry feel better.
Yeah, because Jerry was even commenting, like, did camp always used to suck this much? And Pat
Yeah.
even said and like reassured him, like, no, this place used to suck very little. Um, and like this used to be a place where we can all like have a really good time and then go back to life, and we'd have all these like cherished memories with each other. And yeah, it was a really good scene. Because you see them bonding, like Pat's pushing Jerry around in the dismantled go-kart that no longer has an engine
Yeah.
because they've been demolished, basically. So this is just like
Mm-hmm.
a frame of what used to be a
Yeah.
go-kart. And it's so funny because they go around like one lap of around the track, and then Pat's like, "Oh God, no, we're hitting a curb! Oh no!" And then they like
No!
pretend like they
And
crash,
they crash,
and then
yeah.
Jerry like pulls the steering wheel off of the frame of the go-kart and it's like, "Oh!" And they're
Yeah.
like rolling on the ground. And then
Uh,
after like a couple seconds of laying there, Jerry's like, "That was fun. Let's do it again." And Pat's like, "No, no, 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 no. Once
He's
is
like,
good."
once
He's like,
enough. Yeah.
"Once enough. Yeah, yeah. We'll do it next year." He's like, and this is Jerry's like, come on, Pat." Like, yeah, I did really
Uh,
like that scene, and and to add on to that theory, yes, this technically would be like the first like father son bonding experience if that were the case. We're gonna say it is. We're gonna say it is
yeah.
right here on the show. We're claiming it. Pat is the biological father of Jerry. Moving on. So after that night, they go back. Jerry goes back to the bunkhouse, and then uh, all of a sudden all the kids like stop because they see a figure by the door, and it's no other than Josh. And Josh comes to the door, and they turn the lights on, and Roy and Jerry like exclaim in surprise, like, "Josh, Josh, you're back! What happened? Where were you?" And Josh is playing this lobotomized version of himself, and he's like, "Jerry," like acting like he doesn't
Jerry.
know who anyone is.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Josh, tell us what's wrong." Like they're so concerned. And Josh is like, "Josh was bad." And Roy's like, "Oh man. Oh
Oh
no."
God.
And then he's like, "Josh, now good. Must be good to see my big ass again." And then all the kids are like, "Yeah, like he's back." So they all try to figure
Uh,
out, like, "Well, what happened to you?" He's like, "It's no problem." He tried to kick me out of camp. My dad's a lawyer. Like, he called Tony
mhm.
up the next day and said, "If my son's not back there, like, I'm gonna sue
I'll
your
sue
ass."
your ass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and while Josh is telling him that, he's like shaving the peach fuzz off of his face in the mirror, foreshadowing for
Yeah.
later. Um, and they're like, "Josh, when did you start shaving?" He's like, "Oh, I've been doing it for a couple years or something." I'm like, "What? There's nothing
Yeah.
there."
Like what?
So,
Remember when I shaved my peach fuzz for the first time, and Jacob was like, saw that when we went to
noticed right away, dude.
right away, and he's just like,
I remember like when I started shaving, my mom was like mad. She's like, "Did you start shaving?" I lied. I'm like, "No." And she could see. I'm like, "What the hell? Why are you lying?"
uh,
uh, we get to the point where these kids are like, "Okay, we need to figure out, like, we need to find
what the
something
hell's
out
going
about
on?
Tony." They decide to make a plan to sneak in
To infiltrate,
to
yeah.
infiltrate Tony Perkis's, aka White Goodman, aka Tony the Tiger's
White Castle.
White Castle slash cabin. And they do this with the help of the rest of the kids in Chipmunk House and Sims. He's the lookout without the staff this time, right? He doesn't have a
Best
staff.
lookout ever, by the way.
So they wait for Tony to go on his morning run, and Nick, I know you're gonna have something to say about this next scene, but the kids find a way to get into the window, squeeze through, and they start like searching the place. Meanwhile, Tony is then running through the woods on a trail, passing Pat along the way. And what's Pat doing, by the way, in the middle
Dude,
of the
he's
woods?
raking leaves in the
In
forest.
the middle of the woods, raking leaves.
And
And
I'm thinking to myself, dude, there's leaves everywhere. You ain't going to be raking all those. Like, it was so out of
it's
place.
so odd, but they needed him in that scene. They needed him
I
there. So
know.
it's like, what do we have him do? Well, just stand there with a
Just give
rake.
him a
Act like
rake.
act like you're raking leaves. So so
Oh, shit.
Tony's like jogging, and then the kids are like going through his cabin and trying to find like snacks, trying to find food, and then they discover like plans that Tony has. They discover like a poster board with the faces of some
The
of the
fake
campmates.
advertisements. Yeah.
Yes, on top of like skinny bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry's like, "Wait a minute, that's me. I'm skinny." He's like, "What is this guy trying to do?" We get a scene where Roy and a few other of the kids are trying to open up this chest. Jerry comes
Oh,
over and is able to
yeah.
break open the lock to the chest, and they're like, "Okay,
And it's
Captain."
all those letters.
And it's all the letters that these kids have been writing home. Jerry happens to recognize the letter he wrote his grandma, and all the letters have been
Mm-hmm.
opened. So this guy is
Yep.
reading them, trying to get into their heads, and know how to. That's like psychological warfare.
Well, also, he doesn't want any information about what's going on to get let out of
That's
how bad the camp's been running.
Yes, yes. So it's almost like this is counter spy measure. Any information that's going out, he
Mm-hmm.
has to retrieve it. Ooh.
Ooh.
He doesn't want anyone to know about what the go-win zone at Camp Hope is.
Nope.
Is that you, Scoutmaster Kevin?
Oh! Scoutmaster Kevin. Yeah, he showed us how to pitch a tent.
Oh. So once the revelation has been made that the kids realize like, okay, like we're trapped here, like we have to take matters into our own hands. Meanwhile, Tony is then seen jogging back past Pat. And what's changed from scene to scene with Pat, Nick?
Uh,
There are piles of leaves that he's
Leaves,
raked.
yeah.
And he's looking like he's breaking a sweat. Like, what are you doing with the rest of the leaves there? Are you only raking the leaves on the path that Tony runs every day?
Probably.
Like, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, dude, you got like the deep shit level detail of work. That sucks. Tony runs past him, and he's like, "I'm dogging it, Pat. I'm dogging it." And Pat is just like standing there, like, "What do you mean you're dogging it? What does that
Yeah, I
even
know.
mean, Nick? What does that
I
mean?
don't
I'm
even know what
dogging
that
it."
means. You know what? Dogging it just is raw dogging it. I don't even want to
Oh,
know.
raw dogging the trail, huh? Well,
Yeah, he was.
so once they discover that Tony is coming back, Sims alerts them on the window. He's coming! And all the kids are like, "Okay,
He
quick, we got
finally talks.
yeah, we gotta get everyone together. Everyone get out of the house." And Jerry's like, "Where's Nicholas?" Everyone's out except for Nicholas and Jerry. Jerry like goes to the house and sees Nicholas chowing down on, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was
Oh, yeah.
protein
It looked
powder.
like pudding or something, or some
It was
sort
in
of
a
chocolate.
can, dude. I don't know what that was, but he was eating it.
It's probably canned pudding or something.
I've never heard of such a thing. I've heard of canned bread, but it wasn't bread.
There's canned pudding. Walking Dead, there was an episode where Carl was eating a shitload of pudding on the
What?
roof. Yeah.
Oh, I think I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, there's a meme that was made out of it too.
Of course there was. Somehow that jogs my memory, the fact that it was a meme. That's funny.
See?
Okay. So so once Jerry finds Nicholas, they're able to get out of the window, but before doing that, Nicholas lets off a barking spider and it creeps past Jerry.
Okay.
And it's just like And Jerry's like, "Oh God." Meanwhile, Tony's like getting the key to his house and or the cabin and going into it, and then they finally like show Jerry get out of the window, and then Tony's like walking into the house, and then the kids all run
And
towards like the trees
disperse
in the
behind the
background.
trees.
Yes. And this is also like a really funny scene because you can tell when it was edited that when Tony like
Hmm.
goes to like the window and sees that it was open and he like smells this fart. Like you can tell like he's like wafting the air with his hands and he's like, what's this?" And then he's like he like sniffs and he's like, "Ugh, that wasn't me." Sees the window that was open and then looks out, and all the kids happen to like get behind the tree and hide perfectly. And this is like a group of kids that are just like scattered around all these trees. And Tony looks out the window, doesn't see anyone, and then comes back inside, and then it cuts to where you see all the kids like running away from the trees. I just thought that was really clever because the camera like
It was.
lingers on that scene of the woods, like with Tony like panning from like left to right, like looking to see who's out there. And then they lingered there long enough so that it was easier to cut. I don't know. I that's how I think they did it. That's how I think they made that scene work.
Hmm.
Um, so then they leave, and then the kids all reunite near like the bathrooms, like the public bathrooms, camp bathrooms, and uh, they're talking, and then they hear like food wrapper coming from inside the bathroom. They're like, "Wait a minute, what is that sound?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "What is that? I don't know." It's like it's a wrapper, food wrapper. Come on! They're so excited. So they go into
Uh,
the bathroom and they're like going to like each of the stalls and like, "Hey, what do you have in there?" And the kid's like, "Nothing. I got nothing. Go away." And then the
yeah.
kids like open the stall door. First of all, rude. You never interrupt someone that's in the stall. That's rule number
Unless
1.
you have a reason.
Well, the reason for these kids is that they were hungry.
Yeah.
And and they open the door and they see one of the kids like eating a what is it, like a Whopper?
Yeah.
He's
Some
eating like
sort
a
of
whole
burger.
hamburger that he got, and they're like, "Where'd you get that?" And the kid's like, "I found it." Like, come on, you
I
didn't find
found
that
it.
shit. And he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll tell you, but you got to keep it a secret." And then we get the song
The stump.
Candy playing in the background. I want
One
candy.
candy. Da da da.
And it's so funny because we get like a whole montage of this. We see like this hollowed out tree stump in the middle of the woods, with like a moss like flap lid that the no other than the kid that ratted out the members of Chipmunk Bunks, revealing where their stash was. It's the same kid working for the Perkis team and also supplying snacks to anyone that's willing to pay top dollar. So
Mm-hmm.
this kid's role is whatever your order is, he'll get it,
I'll get it.
place
Yeah.
it in the hollowed out log, take the money.
And I love how during that scene towards the end, fucking Pat gets 2 bags of like Burger King or whatever it
I
is.
don't know what it is, but dude, that's two. That's like two cravings meals from Taco Bell equivalent. I
It
can easily
was.
smash one of those in one sitting. Two of them
Oh,
is
I know.
arguable, but
Same.
hey, it's a cheat day. All right, we don't know how
Yep.
long they've been without a cheat day,
Yeah.
so it's just a really funny scene.
We get
Um,
the weight gain where they take their weights again.
That's what it is. So
Mm-hmm.
once we finish with the snack montage, we're now met with the second weigh-in of Camp Hope, and so Tony's got the cameras running, and he's like, "All right, Lau, let's have our let's have our first runner-up come up to the stage." I forget who the first person was. I don't know if it was Sam. But anyways, someone goes up and it's like, "Oh, you gained 2 pounds." Like, okay, well that's fine. We need to increase your metabolic outtake and decrease your food intake. Muscle weighs more than fat. Come on, and then brings up
Yeah.
Gerald and then trying to like look good for the cameras, basically. And then when Gerald
Yeah.
goes up there, and then Tony's like, "Oh, you cheated, huh?" He's like, "Turn off the camera." And and then he starts scolding Jerry, and all the other kids are just like looking like, oh god, like what if like we're gonna go up next, like we're not any better.
Yeah.
And then Roy goes up there, and
It gets
then
worse.
oh my god, it exponentially gets worse. I think the last person to get up there is like, okay,
It's
come
just
on,
like get
Josh.
off.
Yeah, Josh goes up. It's like, okay, goes to his starting weight, and then goes over like two other, like I think it's like 20 other pounds. He's like, okay, get off the stage. It's just so funny. So in the mix of this, like Tony is like asking the cameraman to turn off the camera and then turn it back on, and just so that the scolding doesn't happen on on camera, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like not recorded. Trying to restore the image of the Tony Perkins system and trying to sell that it works. So his plan's not working. He's off to a bad start. So then, Tony then sets up a plan to get these kids to go on a hike. It's like a 20-mile hike. And in the meantime, uh, Jerry is trying to talk with Pat and Nurse Julie, like, hey, like, we need to try to find a way to, like, get this guy. Like, we need to make sure that we're doing this, like, the legal ways. Like, there's obviously things that he's doing around here that aren't kosher. We just need to, catch him in the act of it and sell it as proof.
Yeah.
And so while that, that B story is in play, the kids have to go on this treacherous 20-mile hike, and and while embarking on this, they're all geared up with day packs. So I don't know how much weight that they're carrying, but it's like
Oh, I
you have to
know.
imagine it's like 40 to 50 pound sack that they have on their backs, and they're walking up. Now in the movie they were probably empty, but still it's like that's a lot.
Yeah.
20 miles. That's a lot, especially if you're not used to that. Um, like 5 miles is different. That's I guess that's more attainable, but 20 miles that's a stretch. But anyways, Tony doesn't think so.
No.
So while they're on the trail, um, the boys are obviously struggling. A couple of them like stagger, and Tony's like, "Leave them behind." Like we
I
don't have
know.
room for stragglers. And so the kids are not gonna leave a man behind. But in the midst of walking around the trail, they notice a little hole, I guess, in the ground. I don't know how it got there,
Yeah,
but
like a little hole or bunker. Yeah.
it had to have been like an access to a mine. I imagine. But when we see it, it's just like a hole, and it's covered up with like wooden planks. But the kids notice it, and they see it's bad. It's like, oh hey, avoid that area. But foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we get to the top of the summit, where these kids are like taking a break, and Tony's trying to push them
We
to go
get the
farther.
crouching tiger, hidden wind.
Yes, yes. They, the kids influence Tony to be like, hey, like we're all having a great time here, but we're thinking we need a little bit of a breather before we continue. And Tony's like, yeah, it's good. That's a good idea. Let's take like an hour to meditate, and then we'll tackle that 80-foot rock face, and we'll just climb it. I know you guys can do it. And it's like, what the hell?
I
So
know.
during their little intermission, the kids come up with a plan, and they snap Tony out of his focused meditation, and they're like, "Hey, we had a predicament here. What was he saying? Like Roy doesn't think you can do sit-ups like blindfolded."
Yep.
And Tony's like, "Well, of course you can. It's just body movements, whether you can see or not." And like, well, Roy doesn't think it can be done. So, why don't you try it? And Tony's like, all right, I'm up for a little challenge. So then
Mm-hmm.
they prank him, and Tony gets into the sit up position, and then Roy gets in front of him, bending over, so that he can give him the full moon when Tony like realizes like,
Yep.
oh, it wasn't Roy, it was Josh.
Yeah.
He pushed Josh down, and he's like, "Oh my!" And Josh is like, "Yeah, pretty impressive stuff, huh, Tony?" So Tony is like blown away, and he's like, "All right, now you guys are gonna get it." So then he starts chasing Josh. Josh runs down the hill, and Tony is in tow, and all the other kids are like chasing after him, like, "No, no, 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 no!" Like they're all nervous. Josh runs over to where that hole was, runs around it,
Mm-hmm.
and then stops right in front of it and turns around and looks at Tony. And Tony's like, "Oh, I got you now." Walks forward and then falls into the trap.
Yep.
And then the kids all hover over the hole and seeing Tony like down for the count, crippled, even though it was like a 5 foot drop maybe.
Yeah.
And as fit as this guy is,
He was down
he's
for the count. He
down.
was crippled,
He's like,
mangled.
and
Uh.
they're like, guys, we've reached a point of no return. And all the kids are like
Mm-hmm.
celebrating. They're like, yeah, we finally got him, our way this
Yeah.
time.
And the
And
best celebration to come.
I know. So all the kids come down from the mountain, and they run into Nurse Julie first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Oh my God, you guys are okay." He's like, "Yeah, well, we took care of Uncle Tony for us." And they're like, "Oh my God, that's so cute."
Yeah.
And Jerry's like, yeah, whatever. Here, why don't you guys come see this?" And they're like, uh-oh." So
Mm.
Pat and Nurse Julie, they go follow the boys, and they see that they've constructed this jail cell holding Uncle Tony in with this electric fence, and I'm like, oh, they actually went all on board with this plan. They found a way to contain him.
Oh, I know. A full-blown jail cell for him.
Because they even have like their own. It's the entrance of this like mine or jail. We'll just call it a makeshift prison. That's what they're calling it. They have like their own little like secret code name. Do you remember what the code was?
No, I forget.
Yankee Doodle is the passcode.
That's right.
So they're able to get through, and then Pat and Julie see Tony in the cell, and they're like, "Oh my God, you guys can't do this! Like, what are you guys doing?" So he tries to go in there and help Tony out. He's like tied to a chair, and Tony's like, "It's about time you came. You're worthless." Like, before he starts like bad mouthing him, Pat's like, "Okay, you know what? No, putting this tape back over your mouth."
Yep.
Kids, like, we got him. And then that was like this Pat's sign of approval. Like, okay, like let's burn this motherfucker down. Like, we'll find a way to get him. But now at least he's contained. And so they're all in praise, and they're like, yeah, we took over the camp. So then we get a nice little montage of them rebranding the camp to Camp Hope standards, removing the signs for the Perkis system, and then we get
The
the
big
celebration night, the
food.
bonfire night. Nick, why don't you lead
Yeah.
us off on this?
If you've seen Sausage Party, was on a whole new level. Like, it was just a food montage galore, them just chowing on food and whipped cream and chocolate. They are just gorging in it. And it's the funniest thing because it's like, I love food, but I don't think I would go that ham on food. But because they've been through so much,
Mm-hmm.
they just they took that whole night just to eat.
It was the it was like the epitome of a cheat meal and binge
Hmm.
gone wrong. But
Yeah.
all these kids care about is we defeated the boss, our first boss battle, and we need to celebrate. So yeah, they're gorging on maraschino cherries. I was getting sick on some of this scene.
Oh, I
Cause
know.
oh god, and then like yeah, like there's like stacks of pizzas being delivered. Like the pizza delivery guys are just
It
holding
was
stacks in
so
their
much
hand. I'm like,
food.
oh my god. And meanwhile, well, all the kids and even Tim's down there and engorging on all the junk food. And Pat and Julie are at they're kind of like on this patio, one of the bunks, and they're like looking at everyone. And Pat's like, "Oh my god, like is that this food down there? Like, oh, I should get in on that." And Julie's like, "No, like stay here with me." And you can tell like there's a piece of Pat that just died right there. He's like, "No, but I want to
Yeah.
go. I want to go be with the boys. All right, I'll stay here with you, honey." um, so then after the whole gorging scene, and it's basically like if you enjoy watching mukbang, like this is that on steroids.
Yeah, it
And
really was.
I mean, I enjoy watching people eat. Don't get me wrong. It's great. It's a great form of content. I only wish I could eat the same food. But this scene took it too far. I'm like, that's too much. So then we get to the morning after, and Pat with his hair combed, looking like Mr. Rogers. I'm like, whoa, dude.
Mm.
And he's like, he whispers into the microphone. He's like, "Good time to wake up, children," and no one wakes up. And then he's like, "Good morning," and then
I know.
and then the feedback from the mic like reverberates off the crowd, and they're just like, "Oh, okay, we're up, we're up." And it's like, I hope we all learned a very valuable lesson last night. And Roy's like, "Yes, don't put Twinkies on your pizza." And
Yep.
then we see like a few other people's, like a few other kids like nod in agreement. That's
Yeah.
what I loved. I'm like, more people tried this. That's hilarious. Um, and then Tim is like looking like ashamed. He's like, "Yeah, I'm ashamed of all of you." He's like,
Yeah.
"We need to do
And
better."
he had a Twinkie on a pizza.
Oh God, he did. He just didn't want to admit it. So
Yeah, I think that's like the worst food combination, by the way. I love pizza and all the combinations you can do, but Twinkies and pizza, ugh,
I've never been a fan of Twinkies to begin with.
they're okay.
You know what I did like
Hmm.
was the it was the oatmeal cream pies, the little Debbie like oatmeal
Oh
sandwiches.
yeah,
I liked those, and then the Nutty Buddies.
yeah.
Oh my God, those were the best. Those are the
Damn,
best.
now I want some.
I know, right? Okay, we're gonna get through this, Nick, and then we can have a snack
I
session.
know.
So they all kind of agree that yes, we should do this right. Like we should do better for ourselves. And Pat motivates the team like, okay, come on, like we're gonna go for a brisk walk. So then but then the mood has changed. Like they're doing things to to stay like active, but they're doing it in a manner where it's like, no, we're all happy doing this together. It's not like we're forcing this upon you. Like, no, let's just all do this. And like, okay, yeah, let's
Yeah,
do this.
they realize the parents are showing up, and that's when the kids can finally see their folks and tell them what they've been up to.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is because Tony is locked up and being watched over, Julie decides to show them, the parents in the hall, that video of how things have been going at camp. And that's when
Yes.
she decides to show what really has been happening. And then that's when all the parents get pissed. And then you can take it from
Once Nurse Julie like shows the video that they were, because they ended up getting help from the cameraman, because
Yep.
while the kids were uh, while the kids were able to successfully subdue Tony and put him in the jail cell, the cameraman revealed to Julie and Pat that he hasn't paid me. Like, he's been all talk. Like, this guy owes me, like, money. So they
Mm-hmm.
kind of find a way, like, well, hey, like, if he owes you, we kind of have an in because now you have something over Tony. And with the help of the cameraman, they were able to get this film. And they doctored it a little bit, getting a scene where Josh and Roy, like, are struggling for food.
Oh
And
yeah.
they, like, reach into this, like, little, I don't know, it's like they're on, they they're like reaching into this hole and the side of like this little wall, and it's revealed like a little like rubber like rat that they act
Mm-hmm.
is a real
Yeah.
rat, and they like cut into it
Yeah.
to like, oh
You can
God, I'm
eat
so
it.
starving, like I can't wait to eat this. And Josh is like gorging on whatever they put in the rat. I'm guessing it's like a pudding or something, but they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
show the parents like this is the desperation these kids have come to. Like they're eating just rats because they're deprived. They're deprived of nutrition, and the kids are like the kids' parents are just like disgusted at this. And in the video, Julie is even seen recorded saying like, if this is to continue this Perky system, one of your kids may be injured. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and now the parents are on board that, okay, well, this isn't what we signed our kids up for. Like we're now
And I like how
upset.
the dad's like, "Why didn't you tell us?" And Jerry's like, "I tried, but he didn't let us send the letters."
Uh-huh. So the truth has
Mm-hmm.
finally come out,
Yep.
and then we cut over to Tony in jail, and Nicholas, our our prized Camp Hope noble kid, he's like standing guard. It's only him too. He's standing guard watching Tony. Tony's able to lure Nicholas to the cell in trying to like make this little piece of foil that was, I guess it was wrapped in the food that he was given earlier. He got like a baked potato, I'm
Mm-hmm.
guessing. Um, so he gets some of that foil and makes it look like it's a Hershey's Kiss and lures Nicholas. It's like, I want to reward you. Queen would be pleased with your efforts here. And Nicholas is like lured in by this chocolate kiss. And first of all, I'm thinking like, first of all, where did Tony get this chocolate kiss from? You were the only one giving him food. You would know what he
Mm-hmm.
would have. You know? So,
Yeah.
anyways,
Someone dropped the ball.
well, Nicholas, it worked. Because Nicholas walks up to the cell
Gets
and
grabbed.
gets grabbed by Tony, and we realize that prior to that interaction, Tony had disengaged the electricity field with
Mm-hmm.
the help
Through
of
the little hole.
through the hole of the cell using his fork that he was given, and
Yep.
then wrapping the handle with a napkin, and then I guess breaking the
Electrical
circuit,
surge. Yeah.
mm-hmm, surging it, and then now the electric field is gone, so now he's able to grab Nicholas
And
and
get out.
basically tells him like, "Get me out of here." And then we cut back over to the assembly hall, and that's when the video ends, and everyone is then left shocked when they are revealed that Tony has been watching for the past couple minutes, and he's like up in the railings, and he like starts like applauding. He's like, "Ha ha! Like that was amazing. Yes, point me out to be the enemy." And then he jumps down, and all the parents are like, "Oh!" Like they're
Mm,
shocked by this guy.
I know.
And then it's like the final showdown. He starts walking to the front of the stage, and he sees Jerry, and he starts like seeing all these glasses on the table that people were probably drinking water out of, and he's like, "I'm indestructible. You can't stop me. I'm a force I can't be beckoned with." And he grabs these glasses and throws them
You
on the
start
ground.
shattering them. Yeah.
Yeah, and starts stepping on the glass and acting like it's not hurting him. We know it's hurting him. Uh,
Oh yeah.
and he's trying to act all tough. And then he goes up to Jerry, and he's about to like scold him even more. And then Jerry's dad, aka Dr. Phil, steps up and punches him. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
"I'm
And
afraid
he
you're
goes
wrong.
flying.
You are through here." And
Boom.
then Tony like gets up and then like karate chops the dad's back when his
Oh,
back
I
is
know.
turned. And I'm like, first of all, that's assault on a parent. Like, hello, lock this kid up again. So after he karate chops the dad, uh, Tony like goes on this rant and then starts backflipping for no
Oh
apparent
yeah.
reason.
Yeah, he
No
does.
apparent reason. He just starts backflipping until
And he
he
knocks
hits the
himself out.
wall. He does too many backflips, one too many backflips, and slides into the wall and knocks himself out. And it's like, this was probably the most unnecessary backflips, just as the unnecessary backflip in the game Spider-Man 3 in the beginning as Peter Parker, and you're like doing
Oh
like
god.
that backflip to try to avoid Green Goblin, aka Harry Osborn, and you end up landing on the glider anyway, and he gets you. It's like, dude, what was that backflip for? Now, with Tony knocking himself out, we cut to the next scene, which is now police cars, right? Police cars show up,
Mm-hmm.
and then the father of Tony Perkis, who is also played by Ben Stiller in this movie, different disguise, obviously, and says like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. You know the parents. Obviously, I'll give you guys your money back. I didn't know this was going on. You know, my son, he's an idiot." and then we
I
see,
know.
and then we see Tony like roll the window down from the car that he's in, and he's like looking all sad. He's like, "Oh," and then
Mm.
the kids all like yell like, "No, well, we don't want to go home. Like, we want to stay here." And Mr. Purgis is like, "Oh well, I mean, I guess I can, leave this ongoing as long as there's someone with experience that can run the place, like who's been here the longest." And
And
then
that would be Pat.
yeah, and then everyone like says how many years they've been there for the counselors, and then Pat says last like 15 years, or something like that, 15 or 20 years, something like that,
It always
and
changes throughout the movie.
yeah, and and then Mr. Perkins like looks at him. He's like, 15 years? What have you been doing with yourself? and then says like, okay, well, I mean, it's fine with me if you guys are okay with it. And all the kids, starting with Jerry, they're like cheering, Pat, Pat,
Pat,
Pat,
Pat,
Pat, Pat,
Pat,
yeah.
Pat,
And then they
Pat,
get him to
Pat.
say, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So all the kids are exclaiming with joy. They're like, yeah, Pat's the boss now. And this is how it should have been from the get go, dude. Pat's a G.
Oh, I
Um,
know.
and so now with the new ownership tying over to Pat, he's now in charge of what's going on now. And the next thing that is going to be the weight on his shoulders is no other than what, Nick?
The trial.
The trial, the MVP end of summer matchup, where it's not just softball, it's all of these little mini incursion games, including a race at the end with the go karts.
Mm-hmm.
And fun fact, earlier in the film, the MVPs that were blowing the socks off of the kids in the earlier softball game, they would also come by the camp in their boat and would mock the kids at Camp Hope. Well, that we don't see the motor off one of those boats being taken, but it's implied and proven that Pat and some of the other kids were able to go over to the MVP's camp and remove the boat motor off of one of their water vessels, and then use that motor to repurpose the go kart. Did you notice that, by the way?
Yeah, I did.
That's what gave the go kart like the turbo boost propeller thing.
Mm-hmm. He needed it.
It's so funny. Um, so yeah, we get the lead up to the MVP challenge, and it's a combination of skill, athleticism, knowledge of history, culture,
And
and
math.
from earlier foreshadowing the movie with Josh shaving his peach fuzz, there's a challenge where you have to shave a balloon. Like there's shaving
Mm-hmm.
cream on a balloon, and you have to take the razor and try to shave it without popping the balloon. And we can see that the MVP are struggling with this. They keep putting the razor to the balloon, and it just keeps popping, and they're like covered in shaving cream. They're like just struggling, and then you see Josh is like whoo, like whistling as he's like cleanly shaving the balloon off of all the shaving cream. It's like, okay, what indestructible balloon did they give him, or what
I
dull
know.
razor did they give him? Like,
It's the Flake Gate.
yep. So all these little mini games are happening, and the MVPs are kind of like showing their athleticism is stellar. However, their book smarts are not so much, and that's where our kids, including Nicholas, to save the
Help the
day,
team catch up.
yes, help the team catch up because he knows more about American history than most of the other kids there. And um, then we get to the go karts,
Mm-hmm.
and Jerry, with his button wings given to him earlier in the film, they all appoint Jerry as captain. They're like, "No, you're driving this bad boy," and he's like, "Oh, really?" So he's all
Did you
excited.
know the foreshadowing throughout the movie? Remember at the beginning when Pat was like, "Do you want to drive this bus?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can learn." And he's like, "Do you know how to stick?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll learn." And that's a little foreshadowing that he's going to drive something. But then
Mm-hmm.
also when he had that bonding moment with Pat, Pat took him around a track just to
Yep.
kind of get the feel of a go kart.
Yep. So it was set up all along. It was
Yep,
Agatha
it was
all along.
planned. Agatha all along.
S- so now with the final steps in motion, Jerry turns on the go-kart and is waiting the baton from the other camp kid. I forget his name. And I mean, by the way, the montage of like all the obstacles that the kids have to go through is pretty funny. Like, what were some of the ones that you remembered?
Oh, probably the one I liked was when they had to do the math question. That shit made me laugh.
Oh, and Nicholas like answers it right away.
Yeah, right away. He's just like, hmm.
I liked the obstacle where they were throwing the football through the tire,
Mm-hmm.
like the tire swing, and Roy obviously throws it in like one shot. She's like, "Yeah, no problem. Shoot." We're at the final match. We have the MVP driver and Gerald the captain off. And by the way, it's so funny when you can see like the stunt doubles like driving the
Yeah.
go-karts and then you see like
Oh,
the
I
close up
know.
of their face. It's like that's totally not the same person driving.
Nope.
Cuz the camera goes from like the front shot of the drivers, like I'm guessing the camera mounted in the go-kart, and then you see like
The
the
side
the
shots and stuff.
handhelds,
Yeah.
yeah, showing the side shots of them racing through. Yeah, honestly, like, I would want to take this track. Like, this looks like a really fun outdoor track
Oh,
for a go
yeah.
kart. I would totally want to do it. They get like neck and neck at times, and then MVP is leading, and then Jerry's leading, and then when it gets to like the second half of the race, um, Jerry is like falling behind, and there's like a mound that's coming up, and the MVP is driving, thinking he's got it. He's like keeping ahead of Jerry, like trying to like stay in front of him so he doesn't like swing around. Well, Jerry's like, "Hang on, I'm gonna turn on this turbo boost," and this
I
is
know. Fucking Nitro.
this is what
Fast and the
cracked me up
Furious.
is because this is when the boat motor's supposed to come into play. Jerry approaches the mound, lifts off, turns that boat propeller on, and you can
Fucking
see it
flies.
like spinning, and it's supposed to indicate like he's getting like a push, and he starts flying through the air, zoom, and jumps over the MVP,
The
like
other
directly
cart.
over in front of him, and lands right in front. And
And
then
wins.
yeah, and then wins. But what's so funny is even when he's in the air, like the airborne shot, and you're seeing the side of it, that propeller is not moving. It's just
I
so
know.
funny. They only needed it to go in that one scene to indicate the turbo boost, and then it wasn't anymore. I'm like, that is so funny. He didn't upgrade to level 2 boost.
Nope. No. Just the level one.
He got one short burst. But it
Yep.
worked.
Boop.
It
Yeah, it
worked.
did.
He landed in front and wins
And
the
got the
race.
trophy.
And here's the other ADR moment that I loved because the MVP, once he gets led by Jerry, he says like, "Oh shoot," and you can tell he means to say the
Mm-hmm.
other word that starts with
Yeah,
S. But it's just
I know.
it's just funny. That one I caught. Like I knew what he was saying there. But earlier in the film with Josh, I did not know what name it was before he said Seymour Butts. Anyways,
Yeah.
um, so then all the kids of Camp Hope, they rush over to Jerry and lift him up. Hooray! Like they won. And they all feel good about this cuz it's an accomplishment from the
They
beginning of
finally
the
got
summer
something, yeah.
and how it started. And then the portion that was sucky with being hosted by Tony Perkis. And then the redemption of the story with all of them being able to come back together, led by Pat, and then actually winning for once, and they all feel that. So then they get over to the winner's corner, and the trophy is about to be presented to Camp Hope, and Gerald like grabs it and he's like cheering it up, raising it in the air, like yeah. David Bow's character, the coach of the MVP team. He's like, "Hey, Pat, so let's talk about this trophy. Like, why don't we say we do a redo?
Mm,
Because we deserve that trophy." And Pat's like, "Oh, this is what matters to you." And he's like holding the trophy. He's like, "This is what you guys want. Like, this is all that matters." Okay, well here, Sims, why don't you do the honors? Gives it to Sims, aka Gandalf, Gandalf the Sims, and and Sims like does like a little like whirlwind, and then throws it like he's playing bocce ball, and
yep.
throws the championship trophy into the lake. And then the
Yep.
MVPers and the coach all go in with their togas that they were wearing. Uh, and they try chasing after the trophy as it's floating away in the lake. I thought that was hilarious. They
That
just,
was a hilarious way to end that sort of scene.
I know. And then now cutting back over to the team, you see a last interaction with Jerry and Pat. And Jerry looks to Pat. He's like,
Hmm.
"Pat, thanks for the best damn summer of my life."
And
And
Pat
then,
says, "Luke, I am your father."
if only he did say that though.
I know.
Cut to credits.
Yep.
Oh man. And overall, I I love this movie to this day. It is
Same.
so funny. And what's even funnier is the fact that years later we get Dodgeball, and
Yep,
I swear we see the reprisal of Tony Perkis with a new
we
name,
do.
new identity.
And there's another theory, which you might add,
Oh,
is one that you did not care for.
what is this? Tell me. This is news to me.
Yes, no, this isn't news to you or new to you. So you know that nerdy guy from Joe's team, the handsome
The
Joes,
average Joes? We're
the
talking about
average
Dodgeball.
Joes, yeah,
Yes, okay.
yeah, dodgeball. We're talking about dodgeball. Remember the nerdy guy whose wife didn't
Winston.
really like him with his kids, Winston?
Mm
What if he becomes the guy in Office Space,
hmm.
angry at his
Ooh.
wife that kind of gave him shit all those years, and after becoming angry in that dodgeball tournament, becomes that guy in Office Space and then burns that to the ground. Bum bum bum.
It's a theory. It's a theory, for sure. I would see that making sense if it did happen after Dodgeball.
It did.
Because the anger and resentment is still in Winston. He'd have to undergo a name change because
Yep.
I forget what his name was in Office Space.
Maybe he murdered his wife and changed his
Oh
name.
my god. This just got dark.
I know.
Good lord. Well, I love that guy's line in Office Space where he's like,
Yeah, but
uh,
tell the folks at home what you said to me when I brought up this theory.
I said, I've heard worse theories,
Big
but
sad.
yeah, sad podcast over.
Yeah. All right. Podcast over.
Oh man. Well, lasting impressions. Is this one? Is this a movie that you would show your kids, or is it one of those that will get lost in time?
I'd show my kids. It's a good wholesome movie that we kind of grew up with. It's one of those movies where it's like, hey, it was good enough. If it's like if I liked it, I'll show it to other people, regardless of what it's about.
I would definitely show my kids this movie,
Mm-hmm.
along with The Sandlot and
Yep.
uh,
A bunch of
a
others.
bunch of others. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you very much for tuning in with us once again for Tangents and
Yeah, and I still
Shenanigans.
can't believe you guys are tuning in again.
I know. When are we going to be over? The question has still yet to be answered by us. We're just going to keep throwing content
Yep.
out there.
Yep. We're going to be throwing shit at you guys until we're done.
Until canceled. Until canceled.
Yeah, until canceled. That or until canceled. Only you can decide.
Yeah. and YouTube and all of its glory.
And YouTube and all the monetization that we don't get.
Be looking for our Patreon. I haven't started.
Yeah.
Well, you want to send us out?
Oh, I thought we already got sent out.
Oh no, we're still live, baby. We're live
Oh,
on
okay.
Saturday night.
All right. Well, it ain't Saturday, but we're done being live. Goodbye.
Until next time, folks. Take care.
See ya.